We're going to talk a bit about what a coaching culture is. So, most organizations have coaching happening somewhere. They send a few high potentials to an executive coach. They run a training day on coaching skills. They write coaching culture into the strategic plan. Then they check the box and they move on. And then, quietly, quite predictably, nothing changes. The meeting still ends with the most senior person's idea winning. The one-on-ones still feel like a status update. People still wait to be told what to do rather than developing the judgment to act on their own. So, here's the question this lesson is going to answer. What's the difference between an organization that has coaching and an organization that is a coaching culture? It turns out the gap is enormous, and it has almost nothing to do with training. The ICF and Human Capital Institute spent years researching this question. They surveyed more than 1,300 HR leaders across industries and found a consistent pattern. Most organizations sit at what they call the emerging level. Coaching is recognized as valuable, but it's applied inconsistently and usually with certain people at certain times under certain specific conditions. Only 23% of organizations in their study reached what they called a strong coaching culture. And the critical differentiator wasn't the number of trained coaches, it was whether senior leaders modeled coaching behavior daily in their meetings, in their one-on-ones, and in how they responded when people brought them problems. A coaching culture, in their definition, exists when coaching is the predominant style of managing and working together. And when a commitment to grow the individual is embedded in the philosophy and practice of the organization, it works. It's not a program, it's not a policy, it's an environment. So, what does that environment actually require? Research across organizational psychology, coaching science, and leadership practice points to four pillars, four conditions that have to be present simultaneously for a coaching culture to be real. Pillar one is all about psychological safety. When they feel safe, they feel free to speak up. They feel free to admit uncertainty, and they want to challenge ideas without the fear of judgment or punishment. Amy Edmondson at Harvard has spent 2 decades documenting why this is the foundation that everything else depends on. Pillar two is coaching leadership behavior. The most senior people in the organization visibly and consistently use coaching techniques in their daily interactions, not just in workshops, but in the meeting this afternoon. Pillar three is growth as an organizational value. Development is treated as a shared responsibility, not a personal benefit. People at every level are expected to invest in their own growth and actively support the growth of those around them. And pillar four, it's structured coaching practice. Regular, intentional coaching conversations are built into the entire rhythm of the organization, not just improvised when someone seems to be struggling. Remove any one of these four pillars, and the others weaken over time. Let me make this a little bit more concrete. Edward Sheen, one of the most important organizational researchers of the last 50 years, found that culture is primarily transmitted through the behavior of the leaders in moments of ambiguity and stress, not in the strategy document, in the moment. So when a team member brings you a problem and you respond with a question instead of a directive, you're building culture. When you admit uncertainty in a meeting, you're building culture. When you ask, "What do you think?" instead of sharing your view first, you're building culture. The reverse is also true. When the most senior person in the room always speaks first, when admitting a mistake has visible consequences, when development is discussed at performance reviews and nowhere else, that's a culture too. It's just not a coaching one. The research by Hunt and Wintraub at Babson College found that when managers consistently coach their direct reports, those team members are 30 to 40% more likely to take initiative on novel problems without waiting for direction. The return on a coaching culture isn't just employee satisfaction. is organizational capacity. In this lesson, you're going to go deeper into the research, work through a side-by-side case study of two teams operating under completely different cultures, and use a guided prompt to audit your own environment against the four pillars. Before you move on, one challenge. Identify the pillar you think is weakest in your immediate context right now. Just name it. You don't need to fix it yet. Awareness is always the first move. The coaching culture you want to build is already inside the conversations you're having every day. The question is, what's happening in those conversations? Let's find out. Thanks.